Thank you, Ajahn. Good morning, everyone. Today's will be the last Sunday teaching for Ajahn for this current visit before Ajahn returns to Perth and Sri Lanka. We are very thankful and grateful to Ajahn for your teaching.
Thank you, Adrian.
Hope Ajahn will come back soon to BSU to teach.
Yes.
Tomorrow, Monday night, will also be Ajahn last guided meditation for this visit before his next return trip next time. We will be having what I call non-residential retreat with Ajahn Brahm. As mentioned before, attendance by booking only, so there are no casual because we don't want any. So we try to minimize any disruptions to the retreatants who have registered to attend the retreat. The talk, however, will be live streamed on the Sunday morning. The retreat will finish on the 13th of March, which is a Friday. Ajahn Brahm will be giving us a public Dhamma talk on a Sunday, which will be on the 15th of March. So everyone is welcome to attend that Sunday. On that 15th of March, the normal Sunday teaching programs and communal lunch will resume on that day as normal. The other thing is that with the current panic going around in Melbourne and all around the world, we like to remind if you are coughing or feel unwell, please restrain yourself from attending crowded places, including this hall, just to be cautious, just in case something happened. Just be mindful of that. I think there should be about already be more new teaching program coming up soon. Thank you.
And the fundraiser on the 14th, is that?
Sorry? The
fundraiser on the 14th, is that for? Or
the 14th of March fundraising dinner is still on, as it is. We see this as a low risk because it's currently being held in a hotel and it's sort of, people are taking more concern. Put it this way, it's low risk compared to people taking public transport. People go for public transport like trams and buses, it's much more confined. And but I think it should be all right. So have no fear on that.
No, thank you, Adrian. That's good. Yes. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So, good morning to everyone. There we are. And we can start with the chanting. Taking the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. And thank you, Savitri, that's good. And we do it in Pali today, that's right.
Mayam Bhante, Tisarnena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama, Dutiyampi Mayam Bhante, Tisarnena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama, Tatyampi Mayam Bhante, Tisarnena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And now I will chant the Namo Tassa 3 times, and then if you'd like to repeat that afterwards, and then I'll chant the refuges, and if you'd like to repeat them afterwards, and the same with the precepts, I will chant them as we usually do. So that's good. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tisaranang gamanang nititang. Panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Adinadana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Kame sumichachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Musavada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Sura Meriya Majapamadhatana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And now we can do the chanting together for the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Iti piso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sattha deva manusanang buddho bhagavati. Oh, sorry about that. Ah, that's fair. Swakato bhagavata dhammo sanditiko akaliko eipasiko opanaiko pachatang veditabo vinyuiti supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Ujjupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Nyāyapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Samicipatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Yadidam tari purisa yugani Ata purisa pugala esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho ahunayo pahunayo dakinayo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyaketang lokasati. And now the Buddha's words on loving kindness in Pali. There we are. Karanyamata kusalena yang tang santang padang abhisamecha sakko ujucha sujucha suacho chasamudu anatimani santu sakko chasubarocha appakicho chasalahu Sandindriyo chanipako cha apagabo kulesu ananugido nachakundang samachare kinchi yena vinyu pare upavadeyung Sukino wa kemino hontu, sambe satta bhavantu sukhitata, ye kechi nabhutati tasava tavarawa anavasesa, digava ye mahantava, manjima rasakanukatula, Dita yeva andita, ye chadure vasanti avidure, Buddha va sambhave siva, sambe satta bhavantu sukhitata, naparo parang nikubeta, nati manyeta kata chinang kanchi, Biarosana patiga sanya, nanya manya sadukami jaya, matayatanyang putang, ayusa eka puttamanurake, evam pisambhabutesu, manasambhavaye aparimanang, Tancha sambalokasmin manasambhavaye aparimanam udang adochatiryancha asambadang averang asapatang titancharang nisino va sayano va yauvatassa vigatamido etang sating aditeya brahmametang viharang idamahu ditincha anupagama silava dasanena sampano kame suvinaya gedhang nahi jatu gambaseyang Punareti, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So there we are. So very nice to take the 3 refuges and 5 precepts and do a bit of chanting. It's a great way to, bring us together. We always have, these days we have icebreakers. This is our icebreaker, Buddhist icebreaker, is taking the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts and doing the chanting too. But it's a much better icebreaker because it's very meaningful and it has a very important impact on our lives, the way we live, especially taking the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts. So I'd like to just first introduce myself for the people who are tuning in on live streaming. Welcome, good morning, there we are. My name is Ajahn Nissarano. And most people here are probably heartily sick of hearing this section. So what? And I'm an Australian monk who ordained with Ajahn Brahm, Ajahn Brahmavamso, in Western Australia in 1998 for my full ordination. So this year is my 22nd year. 22nd, we say, rains retreat usually. And for the last 13 and a half years of that, almost 14 in March, I have been living mainly in Sri Lanka and visiting Australia. The visits to Australia are getting more frequent. And I always enjoy coming back because I was a layperson here. I was a member of the Buddhist Society before I ordained in the 1990s. So it's a sense of connection. And I'm seeing, old friends. It's always nice to meet old Dhamma friends. And we're all getting older, myself included. But today's Dhamma talk, as usual, this is very customary in Buddhist countries, they chant, they call it a gata or verses, and then they explain or expound those verses. So I'll do this, and it's quite useful because it introduces the subject for today's talk. Susukang vata jivama yesang no nati kinchanang piti bhakha bhavisama deva abhasarayatha. So there we are. Any Pali scholars here? There probably are. This is in the Buddhist, the language that the Buddhist texts are recorded in, Pali. So the meaning of that, and this is quite a nice translation, is so happily we live, we who have no attachments. We shall feast on joy, as do the radiant gods. These are heavenly beings. And actually when the Buddha says we have no attachments, it's actually for one who has nothing. One who has nothing. So they've translated that as attachment. No nati kinchanang. So that's, my Pali is pretty rusty, but I can recognize this. Very good. So, does anybody know what I'm going to talk about today? Do I know? It's pretty, the focus will be, of course, part of what the Buddha mentions there, we shall feast on joy. And this, definitely in the Dhammapada, this verse comes from the Dhammapada, which is these verses that of the Buddha's teachings. And they're wonderful verses, a lovely summary of the teachings, and they draw a lot into them. You can certainly read a lot into them. And this one, the story that goes with this one, evidently, I haven't checked it up again, but as I remember, the Buddha went for his alms round. This is where collecting food in the morning. And he went to this Brahmin village, and he got absolutely nothing. Incredible, isn't it? A Buddha could get nothing. It's just amazing. And then he exclaimed this verse. So instead of eating the alms fruit, he was going to feast on joy. He was going to live on the joy. And this is, joy is actually a very important part in our lives. And that's what I would like to talk about today. And talk about joy in terms of meditation. And hopefully, just at the end, I think it is, we have a little meditation on Mudita. This is the focus. This week has been the focus. I gave the Monday night meditation evening. The focus was on Mudita, guided meditation. And yesterday, I also mentioned Mudita. So do people know what Mudita is? Have they heard of it? It's, yes, I think many of you have. It's joy, I translate it as joy with others, either their successes or their good qualities. I usually focus on the good qualities. Those successes can be good. And it's not only other people, it can be ourselves as well. So it can include us too. And there's one book that I really like it's got a very good title. Some of you may know it. And it's called 1,000 Names for Joy. Isn't that a good title? 1,000 Names for Joy. So this joy is I liken it to a superfood, because it's really what the mind needs. It gives energy to the mind, it lifts the mind, it inspires the mind. And we find when we don't have that joy in our life, then the mind can get negative, can get depressed, it can tend to go towards anxiety. It can also become very angry. We can become very angry because we think we're being shortchanged by life. There's no oomph in life, and this is joy. So this is the quality that the Buddha is encouraging for us, not only in our daily life, but particularly in meditation. And I liken the happiness. We do get joy from worldly things. We call them worldly things, and that's from the five senses, that's for sure. But this sort of joy is more of a spiritual joy that's coming from within. Even the joy we experience from the senses, really that's coming from within too. Those things, that food, that pizza, that beautiful sunset, whatever it is, that beautiful person, is not actually, they're not giving us joy. We're giving joy to them in a sense, because that joy is within us. So this is a very important aspect of the Buddha's teaching. And it reminds me, sometimes you hear that the Buddha's teaching is so pessimistic. It's a real downer. These Buddhists, they're misery guts. And they say, why do they say that? They say that because, well, it's all about suffering, isn't it? And how depressing, We know there's difficulty in life, but we don't want to hear about it. But in fact, if that were the case, the Buddha only spoke about suffering, yes, that would be rather disappointing. It would be a downer. But in actual fact, the focus of his teaching is for the end of suffering, which is great happiness. And I say to people, if they don't want to hear about, suffering, about the problems we experience in life, the unsatisfactoriness we experience in life, not getting what we want from life, experiencing sickness, old age and death. If we don't want to hear about those things, how will we deal with them? And how would you feel if you went to a doctor feeling terrible, absolutely sick, really weak, feverish, whatever you were experiencing, and the doctor said, no, there's no sickness, no problem. You wouldn't believe him. You think, what help is he? But the Buddha is likened to a doctor, actually, or physician. But he's a doctor or physician for the mind, not for the body. And so that's very important that we understand our situation in life. And in actual fact, when we do, it can give rise to a lot of happiness, because the happiness from understanding life, insight into what nature reality, can bring a lot of happiness. So we have that funny saying from Ajahn Buddhadasa, oh, what joy to know that there is no happiness in the world. Isn't that a strange saying? It's what a strange saying. People think, God, what's he on about? But there are a number of ways to look at that. And it's the happiness of insight that can say that. But it's the happiness that there's no permanent happiness in life. Because this is what people are often looking for, this permanent happiness, this place we can hang out in permanently, the perfect person, the perfect situation, and that will continue forever and ever. And this is what we're looking for. And of course the Buddha is saying, bad news. And we know it anyway, actually, that everything is built on change, impermanence. So that there is no possibility for things to remain exactly the same. There's no possibility, given our minds, for things, our emotions, to remain the same. So this permanent happiness is not possible. So that's what that saying is talking about. And also, the other aspect to that is, yes, there is no happiness in the world because the happiness is in us. These things out there, they're not pushing happiness into us. Ayakema said there's no hole somewhere that we can push happiness through. It's actually coming from the inside out. We're enjoying, we're giving happiness to whatever we find happy. So that's what the meaning I take from that saying, oh, what joy to know that there is no happiness in the world. But the very important aspect of the Buddha's teaching, and I think this is probably one of the main messages of today, it is up to us what we develop in our minds. And this is a really important part of the Buddha's teaching. He calls it bhavana. This is development or cultivation. That we can actually develop and cultivate the mind. This is a bit of a strange idea for many people who are not, say, Buddhists, because, for instance, they'll think, well, you either have love or you don't. And if you say to a person, well, you can develop this love, loving kindness, they look at you and think, what are you talking about? It won't be real, it won't be authentic. And that's not the case, actually, because we can, by repeating, developing, getting in touch with those feelings, make them almost habitual. They'll come up very naturally for us. And all those negative emotions, such as anger, irritation, annoyance, will be reduced because they cannot hang out with this loving kindness, with these positive states of mind. So that is something that, as I say, many people don't recognise, that they have that potential to develop these. And I hear it from men particularly, they say, oh, loving kindness. I find it very difficult. But of course, they have it. All human beings have it. And the Buddha didn't invent it. It's in all human beings, regardless of their religion. But one of the things that people don't realise, that by not actually cultivating, by actually not developing good qualities in the mind, we can actually fall prey to passively developing and cultivating negative qualities. So people may not be looking after their mind at all, and they watch things on TV, they talk to people, get really angry and upset, and then the same situation comes up again later, and they get really angry and upset, and they keep repeating it. And what amazing, they become very good at getting very angry and upset because they're practicing this passively, not realising that they're actually developing negative states of mind. So really the Buddha's teaching is all about to encourage us to develop these positive states, and particularly joy, that's what I'm talking about today, so that we can, reduce these negative states and have a very pleasant mental experience actually, and develop happiness, which is coming from the inside. One of the very important things for me with Buddhism, and particularly when I learnt about the jhanas, these deep meditations, and I always remember Ayakema, the famous Buddhist German nun who passed away in 1997. She would say it's that happiness that's independent of the outside world. And that is a wonderful way of looking at this happiness that's inside us. It is there for us whether we're experiencing jhana or not, but if one experiences jhana, then that is so extraordinary. Such a pinnacle of happiness and joy that nothing can really compare with that. And the Buddha said that state of mind is actually, it's not nibbana or nirvana, but it's like nibbana or nirvana, the happiness of those states. So in the Buddhist path, there are many different aspects to developing positive states of mind, and I'll just mention a few of them because they're not the main focus here today. And that first, this is where you see, the real focus for Buddhism on happiness. For instance, the 7 factors of awakening. Have you heard of the 7 factors of awakening? The Satta Bojjhanga. And they're really the blueprint for meditation, actually. It's exactly the meditative process, but more from the emotional side. It's quite interesting, it's from the inside. So it starts with mindfulness, sati, and then the next factor is the investigation of what we're experiencing in the mind. Buddha usually often talks about looking at whether the mind's wholesome, positive or negative. This is very important for meditation because if we see the state of the mind, then we can influence, then we can create causes and conditions for that state, if it's negative, to reduce, and for positive states to come up. And because of that mindfulness and that investigation, understanding what's going on in us, we get energy. This is virya. And then this next one is joy, piti. I mentioned it in the quotation that I chanted. And from that, we get a state of tranquility, this great sense of ease in the body and the mind. And this can be experienced as like the body cutting off from the outside world, the senses going down. And then from that, this stillness or samadhi, stillness is what Ajahn Brahm calls it, because he calls it that because the mind is not moving. It's just still. It's just focused on this piti, this joy, this happiness that's in the mind. And so this is the experience of those states. And then from that, we can develop equanimity after that. We can develop equanimity. And that's this state of looking on. But it is a very positive state of mind. But it's a detached state of mind in the sense it's detached from wanting and wanting to get rid of, from desire and from aversion. So it can really see things as they are. That's when we can see things as they are, when our defilements are reduced, when they're actually completely gone, great. And also the Buddha, so that's one area you see this happiness, this joy is so important in, because in meditation, the glue for the mind to stay in one place, it's not, we can't force it, you can try it. It's very unpleasant after a while, and people get headaches if they try and focus the mind and hold it, concentrate, hold it on one object really determinedly. That can cause tensions in the mind. But the glue for the mind to come together, for stillness, for samadhi to arise, is this joy and happiness. Because I say, if you're having a good time, if the mind is having a good time, where else would it want to go? It's like if you're having a good time, you don't think of, going somewhere else. You're enjoying where you are. So this is why this states of piti, joy, happiness, we call pamuja, gladness. There are many, many words in Pali for these positive states of mind. Why they're so important? Because they actually allow us to stay within. We're usually looking for our happiness out there in the world, and these are triggers for our happiness, really. The happiness is still in us. But this is the happiness inside, and it encourages us to look inside, to go inside. And this is going to the control panel. So there are also, when there are the recollections of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, have you heard of those? When we just chanted them. If you've heard of them, you've just chanted them. But you can do those and the other recollections on our generosity, our ethical behaviour, how we speak and act, and also on the heavenly beings. These are recollections. But the whole purpose of them, again, is to develop this, the Buddha says, pamuja, gladness, which becomes this piti, this joy, which then becomes this tranquility and then happiness. And then the mind comes together. And that coming together is a condition for seeing things as they truly are, because the defilement's gone down. They're knocked out temporarily. So all these recollections are meant to bring up happiness, for enjoy in our lives. So if you find in your meditation that there's not enough, as Ajahn Brahm would call it, oomph, then, maybe to reflect on the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha are very useful. And as the qualities of the Buddha, as we say in Sri Lanka, are ananta, endless, you don't have to use the iti pisso. That's the same for the Dhamma and the Sangha. There can be many other qualities. Ananta means limitless, endless. So you can whatever qualities bring up that inspiration, that bring up that joy, that's working for us. And it starts this sequence that leads to samadhi. So this can be a good way of developing more joy in your happiness, in your mind. Other aspect too of the Buddhist practice that leads to this joy, this happiness. Anybody got any ideas? Yes? Oh, I thought you were going to say, no, dana, giving. But it's not only giving to monks and nuns, but giving does generate this happiness. And the Buddha said that merit, this is actually what I was meaning to focus on, was merit. Have you heard of merit? Punya, this is good karma. In Sinhala, it's pin, they call it pin. In Thai, tambun, I think, tambun. This quality of merit, as we call it in English, the Buddha said, happiness is another word for merit, happiness. So you can see that when we are making merit, doing good, whether it be giving, whether it be keeping ethical behaviour, precepts like we've taken today, serving people, whether it's helping in any way, actually, really. And it can be, listening to Dhamma. It can be having respect for those that are worthy of respect, we say, and so forth. So there are many ways we can make merit. It's not just dana, we call it dana giving or generosity. So these are all different ways of creating this happiness. So if one is feeling a bit down, I think the very good thing to do is always to give something to somebody. Go out of one's way to do something that will bring happiness to us, because usually when we do something kind, generous, for another, then it will bring happiness for us. And I say that's one of the best antidepressants, really, is giving. But also, the other side of that, receiving. Being thankful for what we received from others, from life, from the Dhamma, from all the different sources. And that is also an antidepressant. And you have, in psychology today. I know a friend of mine, he's doing a gratitude journal. You know, you tally up how much you were grateful for that day. You know, it must get difficult after a few weeks, saying the same thing, ditto, ditto. So thankfulness, and this is another way, dana and thankfulness, giving and receiving, but also contentment is another one. But today I was going to talk about mudita a little bit, and then hopefully do a mudita meditation. So this is, mudita is a Pali word, and it literally means soft-heartedness. Quite nice, isn't it? Mudu means soft, and so mudita, soft-heartedness. Being a softie. Being softie. So that's still got a positive ring, even in English, I think, yeah, being a softie. And kindliness is another way. And when monks and Buddhist monks and nuns receive food, or people offer other things to them, like robes, or they offer medicines or accommodation, we give a blessing, and we call that the anumodana. And that relates to mudita, actually. It comes from a similar word, anumoditi. And it's to find satisfaction in, to rejoice in, to be thankful for and appreciate benefit from, and to be pleased to enjoy. So it's got a lot of meanings. One of the things you see with the Pali language is there are a lot of words for mental states, positive and negative mental states. In English, we don't have so many. And the reason for that is because the Buddha was mainly interested in the mind. So there's a lot of subtlety in the descriptions of mental states, which is very useful and very good for meditators, because as we develop the meditation, as we become more familiar with our minds, we can discover that the 1,000 names for joy within, in different shades of that happiness. But my favourite translation for mudita, the way I think of it, is joy with others' successes or their good qualities. And that's the one I like. You've probably heard of this, altruistic joy or sympathetic joy. I don't like those so much. They're a bit sort of abstract. They don't have so much feeling to them. And appreciative joy, that's another one. That's another one that people use. So it's this taking joy in other people's. It can be our own good qualities too, our own successes. But often it's other people's, and that can be very, very useful for a number of reasons I'll go into. And this mudita is part of, you've heard of the Brahma Viharas? The 4 Brahma Viharas are called the divine abidings, or sublime abidings. Nice names, aren't they? They're very nice. And or boundless states, because when they're developed, often we think of metta or these states, loving kindness, compassion and so on, as warm and cuddly. And they are. But they have this potential to become boundless, absolutely all-encompassing. So they have incredible power too with them when they develop to that level, and can become a basis for developing enlightenment. But I like Ayakima's, she used to call them the 4 supreme emotions. Isn't that great? And that's what they are, because when you say sublime abidings and divine abidings and so on, that sounds nice, but it doesn't give you quite the feel that these are actually emotions. And one of the things we often think, well, how does an enlightened person feel? This is how they feel. They have this loving kindness and boundless and compassion and this joy with others, a success with their others' qualities. And they have this equanimity as well. They have these 4 states. And it's interesting, when the Buddha taught these four qualities, these 4 supreme emotions, he always taught them together. It's interesting. We only do metta usually, don't we? Do metta. Some people do a little bit of compassion. And today we'll do some mudita. But they hardly ever do it as a group, as a set. But that's the way the Buddha taught it. So loving kindness, compassion, this joy with others, and equanimity is that evenness of mind that sees, it's a mind of letting be, because we know that others, it's including ourselves really too, our actions, the way we think, the way we speak is due to our karma, the past. We've conditioned the way we think, and so this is the consequence, whatever we're experiencing. So this is like if the mind is out of control, we're feeling very distressed or whatever, to have that letting be just for that time, to allow it to run, the momentum to run. This is sort of looking on, equanimity. And sometimes we find that with other people too. As much as we'd like to help, we can't at that particular time. And then the wisdom is to know when you can help and when you can't, isn't it? It really is. But when you can't, not to be burnt out because you can't. You just realise that this person, this situation, the conditions are like this at the moment. But because of impermanence, because of anicca, that will change. So that's the good news. But I'd like to read how the Buddha actually describes developing these four, because actually yesterday somebody said they really liked when I read this out on Monday night, because it may give people an idea of how the Buddha developed metta. It's quite different from actually a lot of the practices we do of developing metta. It's very common to develop metta, say, to ourselves, those that are near and dear to us. This is Ayakim would say, near and dear. And then people who are neutral, and then people who are difficult, and then all beings. And this comes from a famous Buddhist commentary, the Visuddhimagga. But you don't see the Buddha teaching like that, actually. And I do that style of loving kindness, because it does work, and it is useful, and many people find it helpful. But the way the Buddha was teaching was much more in an impersonal way. You'll see when I read this, so that we avoid the pitfalls. When we think of the near and dear, getting into the stories about the near and dear, either positive stories or negative stories, and all those things. Because when we focus on the individual, we can get derailed with the development of loving kindness and so on. The important thing is to develop that loving kindness, develop that compassion, develop that joy with others' success or good qualities, and develop equanimity. And then, when we have that quality, we can use it for difficult people, or people who are neutral, or those that are close to us. So, this is what the Buddha says about developing these four Brahmaviharas, supreme emotions. And he says, one abides pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second quarter, likewise the third, likewise the fourth quarter, so like the clock. So above, so below, around, everywhere, and to all as to oneself. One abides, pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, without ill will. And then it goes on. One abides, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with compassion, and then with a mind imbued with joy with others' success or with their good qualities. And then I can read, and likewise the second quarter, and likewise the third, and likewise the fourth quarter, so above, below, around, everywhere, and to all as to oneself. One abides, pervading the all-encompassing world with a mind imbued with joy at others, for others' success or good qualities, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility. And then the last one, one abides, pervading one quarter with a mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. So that's pretty good, isn't it? It's lovely. But you notice that it's quite impersonal, isn't it? It's really quite impersonal. And as I say, I think the main issue with why the Buddha taught like this was to avoid, getting caught up in personal stories, personal reactions, likes and dislikes to people, which will tend to happen if we focus on the individuals. But having developed this, the loving kindness, for instance, or the compassion, certainly after we've developed it, can give. Why not? then those people will benefit from it. And also, when the mind has those super positive qualities in them, especially if it's really developed to a very, very high level, to a very deep level, then it's almost impossible for anything negative to really break that quality, no matter what people say, no matter how they are. If one's loving kindness is that strong, it won't matter. One still will just have this loving kindness. And the Buddha had it. So we can aim for this. So why do we practice mudita? Why do we practice? For joy. That's good, that's good enough, actually. But when we think of focus on having joy with others' success and with their good qualities, it's like piggybacking on their happiness. We're getting happiness from their happiness. That's much better than what most people experience when they see somebody else who's very happy or had great success in their lives, has very good qualities. Often the reaction can be very, why not me? Can feel envious, we can feel jealous. And this is actually the qualities that mudita is really aimed at. So if you have a problem with envy and jealousy, and this can become quite a severe problem for people, especially if it's in relationships. People can have this almost irrational jealousy of others paying attention to their partners and so on, and suspicion that comes from it. So it's something we need, is very useful for us to develop, because other people will be happy. Why not join in? It's much better than having a negative state of mind which says, why not me? Why not me? Why am I missing out? And the reason we're missing out is because they've got the conditions and causes to experience that at this time. But of course, like everything, it will come and it will go. It will be impermanent. So when we, piggyback on this success or this good quality of another person, then we can experience this joy and this, we call it piti sukha, joy and happiness, which we can use for our meditation. And we use in our life too. So time for a story, because there's no stories yet. And and this one, it's sort of related. It's related, but it's getting joy from a different sense, as you'll see. It's a Nissarano story. I have to have one, at least one. I think the last talk I gave had 3 or so. Probably a bit excessive. But in this case, Nissarano had a donkey, and this donkey was, not only was it a friend, it was his main vehicle, as it were, his main transport. It was also the way he made his livelihood, because he could take things to market on the donkey. So the donkey was very important, very valuable to him. And one day the donkey went missing, which was a great suffering for Nissarano. And so the villagers are very kind, actually, and they said, we'll go and have a look for the donkey. And they looked. They spent the whole day looking for this donkey. Went into probably the desert. Anyway, they went into wherever, and they couldn't find the donkey. They looked everywhere, and they came back, told Nissarano, look, the donkey's gone for good. We think it's gone for good. We couldn't find it. We've searched quite a long way from the village. So Nissarano heard this, and they thought, wow, this is going to be great suffering for Nissarano. But that night, as it was getting dark, they could hear Nissarano exclaiming loudly in the centre of the village, maybe it's the square, saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And the villagers, they came out, they thought, he must have gone mad. He's just lost his donkey. Thank you, thank you. And they said to Nissarano, what's up? What's wrong? Have you gone mad? He said, no. He said, I'm just so thankful. I wasn't on the donkey when it got lost. So he was actually thanking God, actually, I think, in that case. But that's so, it just shows, actually, that's really positive thinking, isn't it? That's what I thought. When I read that, I thought, wow, that's really amazing, actually. So this mudita is very useful for us to develop, it's piggyback on other people's happiness and develop that joy in ourselves as well. Rather than, and sometimes you do see it, people taking delight, or they're pleased in a way, you can feel it, at somebody else's difficulties in life. And I call that reverse mudita. It's rejoicing or taking joy in people's difficulties and problems. And largely, I suspect, so one feels like, well, at least I'm not experiencing that, you know. But probably that's the reason, the motivation that comes from it. And of course, this negative sort of mudita, you see it when people enjoy inflicting suffering on other people in various ways, you know, either physically, emotionally, sexually, verbally, psychologically, however, you know, and often coming from a sense of power. And this is really, we'd say, mega bad karma, actually, that, you know, enjoying other people's suffering. The most extreme example would be torture, wouldn't it? That'd be really extreme. So this joy is a wonderful thing for us to, as I say, reduce those negative, bring happiness to us and piggyback on that happiness of other people. But it will reduce all the other negative qualities in us as well, because the mind tends to be single-tracked. So it'll have one focus, and that will reduce the other negative aspects, especially jealousy and envy. And these are things that are well worth letting go of. And not encouraging, not developing, not cultivating by repeating again and again. Because if we are envious, if we have that tendency and we keep repeating it, it gets stronger. Jealousy will get stronger at other people's good fortune. But it's also a very good balance in our lives because of the often negative aspects of, you know, news, what we hear about. We can hear almost instantaneously. So today, we're hearing about the coronavirus, aren't we? And so when we have this joy, it's a balance to the emotions that come up for people when they think about this coronavirus. And one of the most obvious things that comes up is fear, isn't it? There's a lot of fear that people experience. So I think, you know, the physical coronavirus is one thing, but the mental coronavirus is another thing. Creating that sort of fear, anxiety, you know, that real worry. And of course we have to take care, take precautions, as Adrian's mentioning, but we should also, you know, take care of the mind, not to encourage too much of that fear and anxiety. Do what we can, but not be overwhelmed by it, because that will reduce our ability to react in the best possible way when we find ourselves in different situations. So this is a very useful way to balance those negative inputs, and also that tendency for us to be fault-finding with ourselves and with others. That is a very strong tendency, and if there's joy, that will be reduced. And when we focus on the good qualities of other people, it can be very uplifting for us too, you know, and it can you can experience, you know, when you see these videos of motivational speakers. I see some of them very good. They're really uplifting, very positive. You can get a real sense of joy from them. And I don't know if you've seen Janine Shepherd. She's a woman that got hit. She was on riding a push bike. And for like competition, she was doing, I think, one of these triathlons or something, and got hit by a car and then had like 6 breaks in the spine. And just amazing how she overcame that. And they told her she probably would never walk again. Not only did she walk again, she learnt to fly, because she had this very human response. Because she was sitting on the veranda feeling sorry for herself one day, and sitting in a body brace and sitting in a wheelchair thinking, well, this is probably it. And she saw a plane fly overhead, and she thought, well, if I can't walk, I can fly. Isn't that very human? And she did. And she was a very wonderful example. And you sort of get this joy, this mudita, with somebody that can overcome something like that. But we notice this, any person that has this quality that it can inspire us, the quality that we see we can develop. That's the main purpose of focusing on people's good qualities. We can actually develop that ourselves. And this is actually what we call a kalyana mitta, or mitra in Buddhism. It's a spiritual friend. It can be a spiritual friend because they're giving us the lived example of how you can do it. I've seen this in my life many times because I pay attention to that a lot. Good qualities in people, you know. They may not be totally good. Nobody's perfect. But some people have extraordinarily good an extraordinarily good quality like generosity, kindness and so on. And they become a model, an example of how I can do it and how we can do it. And so this is very worthwhile focusing on because we can develop ourselves because of that. And we have, you know, of course, you know, teachers, my teacher like Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Jagara, Ayakema, these are all important. Kalyana mittas for me, spiritual friends for me. And the qualities that they embodied are ones that I can take on board, I can develop myself. And I have been very much influenced by them. But here, I was going to bring this in today because it's the PSV, we have Kalyana mittas, some of the people, some of the members that were former members and the present members too, all their good qualities that have been like spiritual friends, they have been role models. And I always remember Elizabeth Bell. She was one of the early members of the Buddhist Society, I think started in 1963, not here, and was a president and many, many different roles in that society, in the Buddhist Society. And I used to, when I was living here in Melbourne in the 1990s, I used to drive her here, because we were here by that stage, and I was so impressed with the qualities I saw, her calm, her wisdom, you know, the way she would reflect on things in a very wise way, and her understanding of the Dhamma, and this sort of kindness, and very, very, I think most people would say the same, very high standard of ethical behaviour, sila, really, very, really inspiring. So even here, homegrown, we have, you know, these people whose good qualities we can be inspired by, we can use as a role model. And of course there are others that I won't go into their good qualities. Hello, Cora. Welcome. And there's Mervyn Mendes. I think people remember Mervyn Mendes, who passed away in 2011. Elizabeth passed away in 2007. There's a little stone out there with her name on it, and a tree, that's nice. And also, and Mervyn was a wonderful example of somebody who practices the Dhamma. He was great, very wise and kind. And I remember one person said that he was like, the first time they came to the Buddhist Society, they came to the gate there, and he said, it was like there was a deva at the gate. That was Mervyn Mendes. And he said, he took him in, and they were going to the house next door, the Sangha house, and showed him, you know, how to offer dana and all that sort of thing. And it was really helpful to him. And he just gave that very calmly, quietly. And that person said, it was like there was a deva at the gate who just helped him. So these, when we think of the good qualities of those members in the Buddhist Society, hopefully, you know, if we've been here for years and years and years, we're developing some good qualities, we'd hope so. But we also think of Metta. Do people remember Metta? She was a president for many, many years. Incredible, she really was. And she had a lot of enthusiasm and energy for building up the Buddhist Society, and fundraising was her big area. And there was Beatrice Rebush, who's, I think her children are involved with the Tibetan Buddhist Society, not Tibetan Buddhist Society, Tara House, so it's FPMT. And Fred Whittle, do people remember Fred Whittle? He was here too. He's got a tree out the front. So, may you all contribute to the Buddhist Society and have a tree out. May we have a forest here, that would be great. And there are others who are in the present committee too, who give very selflessly and are very humble with it as well, and are kind as well. So now we'll have just to finish off, maybe just a 5-minute meditation. Isn't it interesting? We can talk about meditation for ages, yet we don't have any time for it. So this is just a guided, very brief guided Mudita meditation. I nearly lost it. So if you can find a comfortable position and adjust the body to make it as balanced as possible, and everything well connected and in balance, and maybe even tuck the chin in a little bit if you find that useful, and come into the present moment, letting go of the past and the future. We're just here for 5 minutes. And we're just aware of the body as it is. Sense of balance, the pressure of sitting. Just being here in the present moment. And relaxing the body mentally from the top of the head to the tips of the toes, just going through the body. Giving it what I call a mental massage with this kind, warm attention. And we can develop the intention, to have the intention to develop joy with somebody's good qualities, whoever it is. Maybe it's a teacher, spiritual teacher, a parent, a friend, anyone. And it can be someone we don't know personally, but we know of. Just thinking of their good qualities, or good quality, which one ever, if it's one. And getting in touch with the feeling that that brings when we think of their good quality. And maybe it will bring up this feeling of
Here are the top search results.
joy with thanks or inspiration, this sort of gladness, whatever feeling that comes up when we think of that good quality of that person. And we can fill ourselves from head to toe with this feeling, whatever that feeling is, joy, happiness, thankfulness, inspiration, whatever we call it. Filling ourselves, the body and the mind, completely with it. This warmth, this joyfulness, this inspiration. And we can, as we breathe in, we can breathe in this joy. And as we breathe out, we can breathe out this joy. And if you wish, you can use a word. We can use sadhu on the in-breath and sadhu on the out-breath. Or wonderful on the in-breath, wonderful on the out-breath. Or marvelous. Or we can use awesome, that's a more recent one. As we breathe in and out with this mudita. And we can share this joy or inspiration, thankfulness with everyone here in the hall. And expand it to beyond the hall, to the children, further beyond the Buddhist Society, to the suburb, and further to the whole of Melbourne. And to all beings, not only the human beings, whatever beings there are, whether they be animals, insects, reptiles, whatever they are, this sense of joy, spreading it, radiating it all over the world and to all realms of existence. And then we can bring this sense of joy back to ourselves. And have the aspirational wish to develop more of this ability to pay attention to people's good qualities, not their bad qualities, and to develop more of this joy from that. And then, having developed joy or metta, whatever, to share it with others through our speech and our actions. And we can anchor this feeling of mudita, this joy, this lift, this inspiration, uplift, this inspiration in our hearts. And to remember it, make it a familiar emotion that we develop, we hang out with, we cultivate, we develop. And lastly, we can just review how we feel after this very short meditation. Do we feel any different? Were we able to get in touch with that joy or appreciation, inspiration? And do we notice that quality change in our experience? Did it change when we shared it with other beings as compared to when we were experiencing it ourselves? And what were the causes for the emotions, the feelings that we experienced? What were the causes and conditions? And lastly, was I making it happen, or was it arising, this joy, because of the causes and conditions? So now we can slowly come out of the meditation, open the eyes slowly, and move the body to make ourselves more comfortable. So I'd like to finish there. This is the talk on, really it's on joy. Maybe we've got a few names, not 1,000 names for joy, but we've got a few names in there. And hopefully you, with this little sampler, this meditation sampler, that you've got some experience or some feeling for it and that you can use that in your life. That's the most important thing with the Buddha's teaching, is to use it because it's so practical and it's aimed at use. And it's a shame not to use it. So if we have developed this joy in our minds from piggybacking on other people's happiness, this will be something that increases the positive, the wholesome states of mind. We're developing our minds in a positive direction and in doing that, we're reducing our negative qualities because we're not giving as much attention to them, hopefully not repeating them as much as usual. And that way, we will find that there's more joy, more happiness in our lives, and we can share that with others. So whatever we develop, we will be able to share with others. And so this is something that's very worthwhile doing, because there will always be people that we'll encounter that have successes in their lives and they have very good qualities. So we might as well, really celebrate that, not be envious and jealous of those success and those qualities. And so I'd like to finish there and wish you well for developing it, myself included. So there we are. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And are there any questions before we just finish off? Or comments or complaints? How dare you teach mudita? I did have one for loving kindness once. Yeah. Any questions or just a stretch up there? No. Sometimes people are stretching. I go, oh, question. No, I'm just stretching. Any online questions or comments or play? Yeah, all right, good. Yes, indeed. Yes. Oh, right. Is it top one? Right. Top one? Oh, there we are.
Ajahn,
Yeah.
my question is, I think we can be happy for people, or have joy for people who have results out of wholesome actions or intentions.
Yes, good point.
How do we find, how should we react with people who find success in doing unwholesome acts, like, for instance, hunting?
Yes,
How do we feel?
Yes, that's a good question, because as I mentioned, some people take joy in other beings, other people's suffering. And hunting is one example of that. They enjoy doing it. And the Buddha does mention the unwholesome sorts of joy in one of the suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, in the middle-length discourses. But with that situation, one could become negative, critical, fault-finding. But for me, when I see that, I know that we are all owners of our karma, so that whatever we do intentionally, from a good intention or a bad intention, will have similar results. So somebody who does a lot of hunting, from a Buddhist perspective, will say that will be a condition, a cause for illness, for early death in this life or in future lives. And so we see some people come into this life and they don't live for long, or they have terrible health. And from a Buddhist perspective, at least, we would suspect, we don't know, we would suspect they've been doing a bit of killing in the past, and that's the cause for their experience in this life. So that is how we can deal with it. It's more coming from the point of view of equanimity, if one can do something about some of these sports, in a wholesome way, because there's in England there's the anti-fox hunting, isn't it? Fox hunting group, and as long as one does it in a wholesome way, arouses awareness about that, then that is something that can be, as long as it's coming from a positive, wholesome emotion. Often these activist groups, they're pretty angry and they're really fired up. So that's not so positive. But anyway, so that's what I would recommend, to reflect that they are owners of their karma. And in actual fact, when you see that, and I think for the Buddha it must have been very much like this, you wouldn't have felt sad, but you feel compassion for them. You think, God, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know the consequences of their actions that will lead to very unpleasant experiences in the future, this life or maybe in future lives. Good. But having said that, of course, Angulimala was a very good example of somebody who'd killed quite a few people. They say 999, but still became enlightened in this life. Fortunately in this life, because if he'd gone on to another life, it wouldn't have been a good story. I think he would straight to hell, they'd say. Yeah. Yes, Stuart.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope that answered that a bit. I think that's it. Yeah,
Any
good.
questions?
No questions? I do have one more there. Oh, you do, have you? Lucio, yes.
It's okay. Thank you.
Interesting talk about equanimity. And I find, it just made me think a little bit about, I find it really hard to maintain, okay, let me phrase this better. Equanimity, probably between wisdom and compassion, somewhere there, there's equanimity. And I find quite hard to find balance when in a specific situation where someone has done something wrong and still cannot take responsibility for. So for the sake of this example would be someone might yell at me and then come back later on with an apology, say, oh, sorry, I yelled at you, but you have done that, you deserved. It's kind of, okay, great. I find it quite hard to exercise stability. Would it be an exercise of equanimity? It makes sense, Bhante, the question.
Yeah.
Thank
If
you.
somebody had just abused you verbally, yes, would that be how to deal with that? Is well, my first reaction would be to to give myself loving kindness, and also to see that person, you know, I would usually see, I would take it not personally, actually. Often, you know, this is ideally, you know, ideally, I would see them as, you know, they're stressed, you know, they're having a bad day, or, you know, there's something that's really a condition, a cause for the way they're behaving now, that has, often it is the case actually, zero to do with me, or zero to do with you. And sometimes you see that when a complete stranger abuses you, you know, you think, I don't know them at all. And you think, well, they can't be personal, you know, they're just, you know. So in a way, it's really, you know, not responding to the trigger outside. That's not easy. The trigger is that person abusing you, and then the emotional reaction of, you know, the self comes out. How dare they? How dare they do that? And then anger and a sense of, well, I'll tell him or I'll tell her, you know, what I think, and so on. So, you know, that is recognising that that's a trigger, but one has the possibility, you know, with, as you said, wisdom, you know, or insight, you know, to not necessarily have to respond in the same manner. It's not easy. But often for me, you know, if it's not taking it personally, it's much easier to not react in the same way. You know, one can react. You know, you can say, calm down. But sometimes if you say things like that, it just makes it worse. It's best just to leave it actually for the time being, because, you know, one of the ways of reflecting that can be useful is that they're temporarily crazy. When we're angry, when we're really, we have that saying in English, don't we? Say, oh, he's mad at me. That's quite literal. And then we see that it's not something, I'm not the cause for it, something, you know, I'm the focus, it's taking it out, or she's taking it out on me, but then one won't take it so personally. You know, you can see it as a mind state that's running in the other person. So this is, you know, ideally how we can deal with it. It all happens so fast, so it's a bit different when you're running on the ground, as it were. Yeah. So I hope that was some use.
Thank you.
Thank you. There we are. Now time to...
The other thing is be grateful and thank the other person for giving the opportunity to practice compassion and equanimity.
Yeah. Wow, that's really going the full. That's going a long way. Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah, wow. Yes. I think that's definitely an elephant stamp. That's a very good way to react, you know. But then it is true, you know, if we look at our life as practice, then all these things are opportunities, you know. Most of them are unwanted, but they do test us. And if we do look at, you know, every situation as being part of the practice, it takes that, what it does do, it takes the sting out of it because it's not so personal. It's actually another way of making it less personal for us, impersonal, so that then we can react or not react in the best possible way. Yeah. So thank you for that one, Adrian. I think now we can, is that it? Is there a couple of, because now nearly 12 minutes to 11. So thank you for that, Lucio. It's always good to come back to the here and now, the practical. It's not, we do our best.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yes.
The first question from online. How do I be okay with being alone?
Oh, how do I be okay with being... Oh, no, that's... being okay with being alone, the best way is to develop loving kindness. Be your own best friend. Be there for yourself. Be your own support. Be on good terms with yourself. And then you're never alone, actually. Because loving kindness, you know, I practice it quite a lot. And when I lived on my own in the forest for 8 years, I rarely felt lonely, even though nobody around. So it was... And part of that is because of loving kindness. You feel close to people, even though they may be a long, long way away. Often people can live together, and because they don't have loving kindness, it's as if they're a long way away. They're not in your mind, and especially not in your mind from a positive emotion like loving kindness. So I would say develop loving kindness. It builds the connection between all of us. It's very useful in that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, and kindness, compassion.
Another question says, it's more looking for information. Ajahn, where can I find the verses that you read about the 4 quarters of metta, karuna,
Yes.
mudita, and upekkha?
Yes. They're actually in many places in the Buddha's teaching, but that one is from a sutta in the middle length discourses, and that's the, as I say, the middle length, the medium sized, and that's from the, I think it's called Asapura Sutta. What's it called? The shorter discourse at Asapura. That's number 40 from the Majjhima Nikaya. Number 40, the 40th talk in that collection called the Middle Length Discourses. And it's very, but it's in many places. And there's a very nice chant that they do in the Ajahn Chah tradition, where they have it's a very nice rhythm. It's fantastic, radiating the 4 Brahma Viharas. And there's a nice story that goes with that too, because Ajahn Brahm was chanting this at Bodhinyana when they used to do the chanting before he became the abbot. They were chanting this, and he completely went into it, went into meditation. Chanting disappeared, everything disappeared for that time. It just became, this loving kindness, these 4 Brahma Viharas actually. And the basic quality of all of them is loving kindness, really, yeah. So it's that one, the Majjhima Nikaya, or the Middle Length Discourses, number 40. It's in there, and the Buddha gives that's where that came from. And also, if you have the Amravati chanting book, they have that chant that I just mentioned. I think they call it infusing, using the Brahma Viharas to infuse the whole world. And it's a very, very nice chant, actually. It's got a lot of energy. So I can't do it. So thank you for that. That's it, is it? So we can...
Yeah. Have you got any more time?
All right, just one, yes.
Okay.
It was a short one. 30 seconds, as someone said to me this morning.
How can we find purpose in life even when we know there is none?
Oh, that's not possible. That's not possible then, isn't it? I think, first of all, to see that, actually. But the purpose in life is to learn, to understand what we're experiencing, and to develop that wisdom, to develop kindness. That's the purpose of life. And that's where, the Buddha's teachings is so extraordinary. Because I always think of Viktor Frankl's definition of, he says, suffering without meaning, this is what this person's talking about really, equals despair. Suffering without meaning equals despair. Can't make any sense of it. What does Buddhism do? It makes a lot of sense. So it's got 4 noble truths. So it's working from the situation we find ourselves in, which is not, life's not the way we want it to be. But we investigate it, we go into it. And that's our purpose, to learn, to understand, and to have that kindness, develop those emotional states. And if one really goes far enough, to put an end to coming back to being born again and again, which will always be subject to unsatisfactoriness, difficulties, problems, and so on. But a lot of wisdom is required for that, and so that's what I would say. So look into the meaning. That's where you'll find the purpose of life. Understanding life gives us the meaning of life. We'll see why we're here. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that will be helpful to him.
Good. So now let's just finish off. Those who would like to bow to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And you're all invited next door for the communal lunch, which is happening there at 11.